So, hello everybody. I selected this title because meaningful use is something that we're all familiar with, but I wanted to reflect as a user and as a medical director for IT on what would be meaningful about the usability of the EHRs that I use. So I doubt this will show up in any ONC document, but it, on reflection, I think really summarizes what I think I'm after when we incorporate what this group has created and it changes the culture of our EHR industry. So I'll start with just a few examples. And the first is that seems to me that if it is truly usable and then there's a simple task, it should be really easy to do. And on the flip side of that, it should be hard to do it incorrectly or wrong. And we do a lot of simple tasks in medicine. Some of the things we do are complicated, but many of them are actually quite straightforward. And one of the reasons that this is important to me is that because there's so many easy things, it would be better if we didn't have to spend as much time as we do training people. Now, I agree that you don't want people to just dive in and use these without any training, but I think it is a reasonable goal that the amount of training can be reduced. And I think that's true for a variety of reasons because other industries have accomplished that. They have taken a training burden and dropped it substantially, and that means that there's more time available for them to do what they're actually supposed to be doing. Our orthopedic surgeons, for example, have to spend time learning how to use 2 EMRs and sometimes 3 EMRs because of where they practice. And each of those EMRs requires a full day, 8 hours. So that's 2 or 3 days. They have a long list of people who want their hips replaced or their knees replaced, and we take them away from that and teach them how to use the EMR so they can do things safely. So wouldn't it be helpful if we could cut down on that from 2 or 3 days to maybe 1 day or maybe even a day and a half? So is that possible? Is that a reasonable goal? I have to say one of the real advantages to this whole project was through Keith Butler here being introduced to some people in our city actually who are work in the aviation industry. And I don't know if you know that, but Keith used to be in Boeing also. So since I'm in Seattle, Boeing is a major part of our community. And so we learned a little bit from their experience. Now remember, we talk about aviation a lot and how they seem to have this all figured out, but it hasn't always been that way. If you've read the Atul Gawande book, you remember the story about checklists. Why did checklists get started? It was because a B-17 crashed. And it turned out that it was more complex to fly this than the previous planes, and pilots forgot to do things. So it's not that the aviation industry is any smarter than the rest of us, but they've learned lessons and they've kept at it. So training someone to fly a 767 and then training them to fly a 757, it used to be that from one plane to the next, it would take them 2 weeks of training. And they cut that down to hours. They learned to fly one, they could fly another. So that didn't happen magically, and it happened with an incredible safety record. So I think there is, from that industry, that example, and I'm not going to say for a minute that flying a plane is simple. It's very complicated. But some things are simple to do, and I think we can do a better job making them easy to do and hard to do them incorrectly. So just to amplify with some examples from my last 7 days, and these are not real screenshots, they're simulations, so I'm not pointing fingers at anyone here, but one of the examples is that I wrote an order for a medication, and I was done writing the order. I'd filled in all the boxes, and it was ready to go, except I needed to sign it. And so this screen shows up, and it's simulated, so you don't see the real thing. But if you look at this screen, there's no clue how you sign that medication. There's no sign button. So it seems to me that if I'm busy and I've written a medication, then when it comes time to sign it, someone might have anticipated that that would be my next action, because that always follows the order. Every order that I write, I sign. So that's an example of something where it's pretty simple, and it's not doesn't require a great deal of judgment, but it slows me down, and that doesn't seem necessary. So I have to teach people how to sign when you get to this screen. So that's just one simple example, and it's hard to do with something that's simple. But here's another example of something that is it's easy to make a mistake. And I have a lot of couples in my practice, older couples. This is a fictitious example, but it's someone who happens to be from a culture with lengthy names. And this name is the same. It's shared between the man and the woman. And so they're both in the exam room with me. So one sitting on the right, one sitting on the left. And I'm talking to both of them. They're both Russian. It does say they're male, but you look at the name, and the first name is truncated because there's not enough room to put it there. So I've made that mistake. I have prescribed medications for benign prostatic hypertrophy for the woman. And then I have to quickly call the pharmacy and say that really wasn't intended for them. So that's an example of something that, it seems like, and it has been worked out. I just looked at the website that we learned about this morning, and it does show some suggestions for making it harder to make the mistake of identifying the patient. And you might say you shouldn't have two open at the same time, but you still will have the same problem, because you'll open up one patient and you'll see just exactly what I'm showing you here. So that's something that I think we can do better on. And I worry that in this simple example I catch it, but sometimes we don't. So now let's take another story of something that's relatively simple and common, and see what we can learn from it. So this is the map of Seattle, where I live, and I've lived in other places, but most of my life I've been in this city, and I've lived in two locations, one here and one here. And what you see imposed on this is the flight patterns for planes that are landing at our airport. So you can see that I am fully aware of planes landing. It happens a lot. The winds from Seattle usually come from the south, so planes are landing to the south. And these lines show that they go right over my house when I was growing up and now. So all day long, every day, planes are landing, and sometimes into the night. A lot of planes. In fact, it happens 500 times a day. And if you add up the years, that's millions of flights. And they always land. Always. So this is really common. It's a really common thing. And I know from those of you who are pilots that it's not a simple thing either. It's pretty complicated. But the only time or the last time I should say, not the only time, the last time one of these planes landed and crashed and somebody died was in 1947. That's before I was born. So it's amazing to me that every day these things land and they do not crash. Now, I know planes do crash, and it's a tragedy, but at least in my personal experience in my city, I just don't see this happen. So I think of the simple things I do with the EMR that I'm reasonably good at using, because after all, I'm the IT medical director, all right? It's sort of my focus. But I still make mistakes, and it's because I think we have something to learn more about design. So if they can land 10 million planes in the course of the time between there's a serious accident, it seems like the aviation industry really does have something to teach us about safety. And I know that it wasn't magical. I know that it was learned the hard way. So that's one hope. The other hope is that as we talk about usability, we think about ourselves as people and the fact that we have things that we're really good at doing, such as what we've been doing all day, which is talking to each other. Okay? And we have things that some of us are good at doing and some of us are not as good at doing. And that has to do with using computers. And I know from my experience helping my colleagues that some people love that. They do a really good job of it. They look forward to a new EMR to use and to learn and to master. And other people hate it. They just do not like anything about it. And they get angry and their neck veins bulge, and they hide it, and they usually find some other thing to criticize than their own personal characteristics. But that's the way people are, and many of those people in both groups are excellent clinicians. So it has nothing to do with the things that we hire them to do. It has to do with the fact that they don't like the metaphor that we use with computers in 2014. So my hope is that we somehow take advantage with our electronic records of what human beings do best. And that is, we have to reflect a little bit on psychology and understanding of what human beings are strong at doing and what they're not as strong and have to be taught to do. And an example that would be reflective would be, and I know that not all of you are in health sciences, but I'm going to show you a slide here. And this is some hardware that we all have. And it shows that there are certain regions of our brain here that we know from a lot of work are tied to sound and to generating sound and to understanding sound. And there's another region back here that is really good at vision. And this is the region that has to do with movement and controlling our extremities. So the sound area seems to be very promising to me because I know from your attendance here today that you're also pretty good at talking and listening. So I'm really hopeful that we'll take more advantage of that. And I've heard some promising comments from some of our vendors here about the use of voice. I think that it is something that would appeal to many, many of our users, not to all of them. But I don't think we can really hope that any single advance we make will appeal to everybody. I think that's a bit of a tall order. I personally find that when I use voice, I'm more expressive. I more accurately reflect what people have told me, that I can look them in the eye and not be tempted to spend a lot of time at a keyboard because I know that I can very quickly recount what I've heard, and then I can have them review it if I'm not sure to make sure that I've understood accurately. So those are my two hopes. One, that simple things will be easy to do, and it will be hard to do them incorrectly. And I've given you two examples that are challenges within the last 7 days. And secondly, I think as a direction, we may want to broaden our understanding of usability from the screen design to maybe beyond that, to voice, to vision, and to other things that humans have excelled at for tens of millions of years. And I will stop there.